So, the chapter that we're going to discuss today is on supply chain management in practice. Now, with the previous chapters that we were discussing, it was about dealing with supply chain in the manufacturing sector, but this chapter explains how supply chain management is applied in practice, focusing on the basics of supply chain network design in the manufacturing, services, and retail sectors. So, for example, in the service sector, it would be banks and restaurants and hospitals, and we look at how the movement of money, or for example, if it is in a hospital or restaurants, food, linen, soap, or catering equipment from the supply chain moves from the source till the user. So, this chapter basically provides us details about how supply chain management operates practically within the manufacturing, retail, and service industries. And we take a look at that. And we focus also on what commonly we speak as supply chain network design. So, these are some of the definitions, but we know that in today's competitive environment, things do not really come to an end, so to speak, but are rather trapped in an ongoing cycle. So, with this cyclic movement of supply chain flows, there are some starting points, there are finishing points, such as you're planning for seasonal fashion and ending off at the end of the season. So, when we're talking about supply chain network design as a function of planning, supply chain flows, we refer to the start at a particular point in time and a specific finish point as well. So, the basics of supply chain network design. To understand that, we need to take cognizance of the main challenges that are faced by supply chains of the future, and these include the following, but obviously not limited to, are your cost containment, globalization, customer intimacy, visibility, and risk. Supply chain networks are designed to address to these challenges. So, seeing that there is rapid, constant, and unpredictable change in business environment, there is obviously increase in competition at the same time, and it means constantly challenging the supply chain efficiencies, leading to challenges of no cost containment. Now, what is cost containment? Cost containment is about um, curbing down or minimizing of costs and expenses that are related to the implementation of specific supply chain activities, such as your transport, storage, and inventory. So, how can we minimize cost there? Then equally, executives also, our top management, that like we say, are constantly flooded with more information than ever, leading to supply chain executives struggling with visibility throughout the supply chain, and needing to see and act on the right information. So, visibility here then refers to the ability to track the movement of products, to track the movement of services, funds, and information through the supply chain from beginning to end. And increased information flow also leads to related risk in supply chain as to how to manage and bring about effective supply chain network design. So, the top challenges um, faced by the global supply chain designs, obviously, customer intimacy places pressure on companies to be more demand driven while simultaneously having to increase their connectivity with their suppliers. Then, customer intimacy also refers to an approach to supply chain network design in which the supply chain is designed from a customer's point of view. So, that is also customer intimacy. And then, to overcome these challenges, the supply chain networks have a specific design requirement. So, to make sure that they have a particular design in mind. The larger parts of the design framework include the raw materials suppliers, so basically the ones who supply us raw materials, the sub assembly, then there is full assembly, there is distributors, there is retailers, and customers, as you can see in the figure here. So, raw materials basically is referred to parts of products in their raw form where they have no added value. Then the flow that's required in the network design within the supply chain network also include products and services flow, flow of information, and flow of funds, that you can see in the figure here. And the components that are highlighted in the figure are more familiar in terms of manufacturing supply chain network designs, but also are applicable in services and retail supply chain designs. A supply chain network also refers to the arrangement of all the stakeholders in the total supply from the point of supply to the point of delivery. Okay, so these design all this that we see, it also entails a specific configuration of such a network. So again, keeping all of that in mind, these are the things that also keep changing depending on the challenges and depending on the industry that they are catering to. Now, the supply chain network design and its operational flows. Just to recap, the supply chain network design includes challenges of cost containment, risk, customer centricity, globalization, and visibility, as we spoke about it. And then globalization there was also referring to the phenomenon of international integration, that comes from the interchange of world views, interchange of ideas, products, and services, and also different cultures. Now, the basics of supply chain network design considers the six components of raw material, assembly, um, which is your sub and full assembly, distribution, retailer, and customer, and also consider the other elements, which is your different tiers of suppliers, the relationship with manufacturers, inbound I'm sorry, inbound activities to manufacturers, outbound activities from manufacturers to wholesalers, graphics, if there is anything that speaks about the design part, and then again, each link regarding transport information and funds. So, if you can see, to explain that supply chain network design in the figure here, let's see what all is here in that figure. So, if you see in the figure, there are circles of different shapes, each representing systems that form a part of the supply chain network design. Now, in other words, these systems might also refer to buyers, they can be suppliers, labor, they can be government, they can be politics, and so forth. And then there are two aspects of importance to consider between the organization design in the supply chain network and its surrounding systems. So, the one aspect refers to the level of influence that the designing organization has over the surrounding systems, and the second aspect refers to the environmental sphere to which the specific system belongs to. Um, an example would be like a supplier to the organization. Okay, the circles on the left, they indicate the systems over which the organization has a high level of influence, and they are typically the internal parts, which is your staff, the financial resources, management, and all of that. And the circles on the right hand, they indicate the systems over which the organizations have little or no influence, which is politics, the social trends that change over time, or the economy. So you can see the figure, it tries to illustrate the boundaries of the total supply chain network design. And in a larger business context, now these boundaries are indicated through dotted lines that surrounds the circle in the center and on the left of the figure. And the line is dotted because systems may move in and out of the network design as a relational status between the organization and their respective systems, which keeps on changing from time to time. And then supply chain network within the retail and manufacturing sectors. So, if just to keep this figure in mind, or the elements that are mentioned with reference to these, the recap that we had in this slide here, if you see the different tier of suppliers, their relationships. So, to speak of the different tier of suppliers, so the tier of suppliers in an organization depend on the business model of that organization. So what are the different level of suppliers? In terms of when it comes to delivering, it depends on the value proposition of their customers. The tier of suppliers also refer to the classification of suppliers depending on whether they are primarily involved with this company or they are sub suppliers or assemblers. Okay, and then here we spoke about the relationship with the retailers. Okay, the relationship with suppliers or manufacturers. Now the relationship with suppliers have both, like, it can be relational or it can be contractual, and this has a particular impact on the HR and skills requirement of the function. Then we have the inbound activities to manufacturers. Remember that there is a flow of products or services and information and funds that happens in each of these parts. So another way to depict such a flow in the retail industry would be by illustrating a circular movement, by highlighting on sequences that speak between the supply chain components. Okay, and that is your inbound activities and outbound activities, which is your logistical parts. Then we have the outbound activities from warehouse to retailer. So as the inbound logistics refer to moving products between the manufacturer and warehouse, outbound would refer to moving the products away from the warehouse towards the stores or as part of the retail chain or to the retailer. So, in some cases, it may be that the outbound logistics is destined for large wholesalers and not necessarily for retailers. It might just go end up by a wholesaler and then further to the retailer. Then we say each link regarding transport information and funds. So, to explain that, it's regarding information, an example of, say, for example, a hotel using a third party subcontractor when it comes to cleaning their linen. Okay, like your Sogosan or casino groups. So, the hotel industry is a good example of how the supply chain works in the services industry. So as you can see that depending on the industries that companies belong to, their planning, their processes, their vision and structure, it also implies or has influence on the supply chain system as well. Okay, so that's all about the chapter.